In the waning light of the dying sun, where the last embers of the sky bled crimson across the storm-torn horizon, there rose a jagged precipice known in forgotten tongues as Embercliff, its blackened spires jutting like the broken teeth of a long-dead god, where fire seeped through ancient cracks in the stone and the wind sang with the screams of history. Atop this dread pinnacle stood Cindertalon, the winged catastrophe whose birth had torn the veil between flame and flesh, a dragon of crimson scale and seared bone whose breath had reduced kingdoms to charred ruin and whose eyes held the memory of civilizations turned to ash. None remembered when he had first taken flight, only that with each beat of his monstrous wings, the sky wept sparks and the earth trembled in fear, and the people of the lowlands whispered prayers not to gods, but to the silence that might follow his passing. In the time of the Third Sundering, when the world cracked beneath the weight of its own hatred, and empires fell beneath obsidian skies, Cindertalon emerged not as a beast but as judgment made manifest, a flame-born curse from the heart of the world pyre, summoned by the warlocks of the Black Synod who sought to unmake their enemies but instead unleashed doom upon all. From the molten cradles of the north, across the ash-choked steppes of Vergul and the sapphire dunes of Nikalir, his shadow raised cities, his scream ruptured minds, and his claws carved names from the stone of time itself. The last of the skyward elves fell beneath his gaze, their crystalline towers melting into rivers of glass, and the Stonekin of Dur Korath fled beneath the mountains, never to rise again. The flame wardens of Gyrathor tried to bind him with sigils forged in the tongues of fire elementals, yet their runes cracked, and the sacred monoliths exploded into 1,000 screaming sparks. In the silence that followed, the world changed. Embercliff became taboo, a place inspoken on maps, and the very air above it turned to poison for birds and breath alike. Even dragons of lesser bloodlines dared not draw near, for they knew what slept upon that cursed throne of basalt and bone. Yet even nightmares draw challengers, and in the age of the waning crown, a new generation of flame-born heroes rose from the shards of the old, among them Cindertalon the Emberbound, last scion of the Pyrestone line, whose veins pulsed with fire-forged blood, and whose sword, Ashrend, had once tasted the heart of a volcano god. With her cane-thorn Blackroot, druid of the charred groves, who spoke to trees burned by Cindertalon's breath and red omens in their cracked rings, and Orvik Chainbreaker, a giant-blooded smith whose gauntlets were forged from the broken shackles of ancient Wyrm kings. Together they journeyed into the Ashen Wilds, through the Graveglass Forest where trees bled smoke, into the Skorkskar Valley where the bones of titans still glowed with forgotten heat, and finally stood before Embercliff, the dread pulse of its molten heart beckoning them skyward. The ascent was madness, lava rain and windstorms of soot, haunted echoes of screams from centuries past, but they reached the summit, and there found him, sleeping still, his breath a rhythm of rising cinders, his wings blanketing the cliff like blood-stained banners of conquest. But the heroes did not falter. With spells carved in dragonbone and rites older than speech, they invoked the flame-bending pact, awakening the crimson dread. The battle that followed shattered the cliffside, split the clouds in half, and burned the stars themselves into brighter brilliance. Thorn was the first to fall, his soul claimed by the roots of a flame-wrought tree. Orvik followed, pinning Cindertalon's wing with a hammer blow so mighty it cracked the mountain, though the dragon's tail crushed him beneath centuries of wrath. Only Cindertalon remained, her blade ignited not by magic, but by memory, wielding the wrath of her slain bloodline with a scream that shook the veil between the mortal and the mythic. She drove Ashrend into the hollow where Cindertalon's heart once pulsed, and for a moment the beast stilled. Yet Cindertalon did not die. He burned brighter. From the wound burst not blood but prophecy, flames that whispered the truth. He was not a curse but a harbinger, not evil but inevitability, the reckoning born of mortal greed, summoned again and again by the arrogance of men who dare command fire without understanding its hunger. Cindertalon was consumed, her form scattered into sparks that still roam the night sky. And Cindertalon rose once more, his wings blotting the heavens, his eyes reflecting the end of all things. Now, in the twilight of all ages, the world waits beneath a sky ever red, where the sun dares not set, and the dread of Embercliff burns eternal. Villages speak his name only in tears, kings consult ashes for guidance, and far across the ruined realms, a child is born with flame in her blood and dreams of a dragon's scream, because the cycle continues, and Cindertalon waits, not to conquer, but to return.